These paintings are by the Ukrainian artist William Kurelek. This one is called The Maze. It shows a skull split open to reveal the thoughts and memories inside. Kurelek painted the maze while undergoing treatment for a schizophrenic breakdown at the Maudsley Psychiatric Hospital in London. Cats by Louis Wain, also painted during a period of mental illness.
I suppose my rough and ready definition of mental health might be something to do with one's capacity to open and close one's own doors reasonably safely and be able to get them closed again once one's opened them and let a lot of stuff out. I think it poses a question then of to what extent that is in fact more than we often acknowledge a part of the art-making process anyway.
A Frightened Woman by a patient in a Bristol mental hospital. A Frightened Man by the Norwegian artist Edvard Munch. From the pages of Edvard Munch's diary.
I was walking along the road with two friends. The sun set. I felt a tinge of melancholy. Suddenly, the sky became a bloody red. I stood there, trembling with fright, and I felt a loud, unending scream, piercing nature.
From the last letter of Van Gogh, written 4 weeks before his death.
I still felt very sad and continued to feel the storm weighing on me. My life is threatened at the very root, and my steps are wavering. I set to work again, though the brush almost slipped from my fingers. Vast fields of wheat under troubled skies, and I did not need to go out of my way to express sadness and extreme loneliness.
An account of 2 paintings by a female patient, one from the middle of her illness, the other from near its end.
The father's cold, cruel personality is split, but balanced. The skull is open for psychiatric examination. I live in the tree and the flower beside a road that leads to nothingness. I rise from the flames of my illness and follow the road to an uncertain future. But my problems are not entirely solved.
Painting can provide its own wordless diary of despair. One patient records his image of women. Another packs his nude drawing with visual puns. an angry mouth pronouncing a crossword. A crossword. Kurelek left this description of his psychological world.
The patient lies in a barren wheat field with his skull split open. The maze is an exitless one. The white rat curled up in the center represents my spirit. One section shows my home and upbringing and my fear of being rejected by my father. Life is a museum of hopelessness. The outside world is a wasteland, a pile of excrement with flies in it. The hospital is a test tube.
The art therapy department in Glenside Hospital, Bristol, where patients are encouraged to express their problems through painting and drawing.
I think of the art therapy room or situation in a hospital as an asylum within the asylum, as it were. Marion Milner, who's a writer on art and psychopathology, talks about creating a place where it's safe to be absent-minded. And in a sense, the art therapy room is a place where it is safe to be absent-minded.
Art therapy is used throughout Britain's mental hospitals as an important aid to emotional recovery.
Primarily, as I see it, it's a process of helping people to get to know themselves a lot better, and part of a process of helping someone to realize themselves fully as a person. It fulfills a lot of other roles in between, but one of the prime things that it does in the most immediate and obvious sense is to help people to express their feelings. I have a sort of horrible image of all the bad art teachers that there must have been around in the background of some of these people who insisted on a particular kind of art as good art. And I find that as soon as I can get past that, saying it doesn't matter what you produce or how you produce it or how good it is, then the person can relax and get straight on with producing a picture.
If this feeling here, the feeling of this character, was to be expressed in quite an abstract shape, do you think you could be able to do that? As a sketch, to get the feeling of this character?
A bit difficult. I've never really done abstract before.
So you wouldn't like to give it a try?
Not really, no.
Okay.
Very often people can come in and be very controlled and very tight, and you do have to learn to spot the difference between somebody being that naturally and somebody doing that because they're unsure or uncertain about what may happen if they loosen up or let go. People like that generate a lot of resistance. They don't really want to change, and it becomes obvious that change is what they need. And so we would approach them in such a way that we can offer them opportunities to change, and if they can trust us as their therapist, then we will help them through any difficult periods they go through while they're loosening up, we call it anyway. That's the bolt of lightning.
That's God.
That's God there, is it?
God, yeah.
Was he punishing you for something, is it?
He's punishing me for something, yeah, that's why I'm in here. So there I am. Right. I hope I'm called a
saint being punished.
Saint being punished.
So what have you done wrong?
Well, I cracked it up.
The woman who produced this painting added a description of art therapy and its benefits.
Painting provides me with a legitimate outlet for tensions, frustrations, emotions. Today it helped bring out some of my fears, hopefully externalizing some of the pain. The combination of painting and contact with other people in the group helps reduce the feeling of isolation and despair.
Painting in groups allows patients to support and help one another. Roy Thornton of Barrow Hospital leads a training session with hospital staff.
I want you to imagine that you are in a ship. All of a sudden there's a loud bang and you come up onto a rock. There's an island not very far away. I'd like you to imagine you're now going ashore. What kind of an island is it? Is it hostile, pleasant, exciting, dull, barren? See yourself beginning to explore the island. I get quite a lot of people who are not as articulate, and particularly, in spite of intelligence, regardless of intelligence, in the area of feelings, emotions. People simply don't have the language, quite frequently, because it was not part of their background when they were children. People in the family, apparently very nice people, well-educated people, from whatever background, somehow don't get around to talking about feelings easily. So it can be a fairly new experience. Somehow, in pictorial form, you can put your feelings down. And it's amazing to see how people will come in saying, I can't draw, I can't paint, I certainly couldn't express a feeling. And to their amazement, produce quite exciting pictures which say very clearly how they're feeling, and also telling them eventually a lot more than they thought they'd put down. Can you say how you feel about the lake on the one side of you?
I feel the lake's very strong. I feel it could burst out and wash over me into the sea. But I'm being very strong at the moment and I'm holding it back. Okay. I feel like I'm having quite a fight with it sometimes.
Fighting, right. Can you now say, call the lake Helen and tell Helen what you're doing to her?
I'm stopping Helen from going into the sea. I don't want her to go into the sea. I want her to stay where she is, contained and deep.
You want to continue to keep Helen in, do you? You want to hold her there? Okay, can you go back to being Helen and say to the barrier how you feel about that?
I think the barrier's probably fulfilling quite a good purpose.
Tell it to the barrier, as if it's a person. Tell it exactly what you want to say to that barrier. What would you like to say to that barrier?
Barrier, you're being quite good to me. I think you probably know what you're doing.
Well, nearly every patient has a problem of some kind or other which they find some difficulty in overcoming, which could express itself as a barrier, like in Helen's painting. Now, this patient did a picture of herself as a fetus in a womb. You can see that it's black, it's enclosing and safe, by contrast with these very dangerous knife-like points on the outside. And you can see how vulnerable she looks. Both of us were feeling very stuck at this point, and it's a critical point in therapy when this happens. If you can't get through it, then whatever happens after that is going to erode. So what I often do at this point is to suggest that that person shows their stuckness, they portray their block. And in this case, she did that quite straightforwardly as a wall. So she's produced a couple of tools, a pickaxe and a mallet, and she's already started on the wall, so things are beginning to move. On the other side, we have what looks like a river pouring over as a waterfall and coming right into the foreground. And without the block, obviously, that would come straight into the foreground, and there would be presumably a lot of energy and a lot of content there, which might overwhelm the person. So at this point, we're going to be moving very carefully. I thought it might be helpful if we, as it were, took a helicopter above this whole scene, so that what was close up and obviously overwhelming the person in terms of the strength of feeling is put in perspective. And it might have been good that we did that because the waterfall has grown very largely. And it looks as though originally the river went to the right here, so that it wasn't building up but being diverted. And voluntarily she's allowing the river, the emotions, to overcome the barrier, so they're now flowing right on into the foreground. Now, having talked about what's happening previously, she feels able to move on to looking at herself directly. And for the first time, you'll see that she has drawn a real adult arm and hand, and incidentally also that it's drawn well, so there's some talent there perhaps.
Can I just ask you at that point, a number of art therapists have said they actively discourage patients from trying to use very precise, naturalistic, imitative art drawing techniques, that they don't believe that's what's important. You say that's a movement onwards. Why do you say that?
Yes, for this particular person, you have to say it within context. For this person, she's moving from internal emotional concerns to looking at herself as a person, and we've moved from the first picture of herself as still a fetus in her emotional perceptions to an adult arm. Well, that is important. I wouldn't be repressing that expression. The drawing is merely suggesting that she's looking at herself in a more real way.
What's she holding in her hand?
Well, that seems to be a mirror because it reflects the other side of this creature here. If you're approaching other people with a perception of yourself as a beetle, you're not going to be very optimistic about the outcome of your relationship. And somehow or other we have to help the person to see that that is not how they are, that's how they've learnt to see themselves.
These parts of ourselves are not shameful. They shouldn't be hidden. They shouldn't be in drawers. They should be displayed as evidence of, you know, what Rollo May, who's an existential psychiatrist, calls the daimonic. The impulses in ourselves, its social coding and social conditioning, seeks to suppress.
The demonic visions of Adolf Wöfli, interned in an asylum after molesting a child, collected by the French artist Dubuffet, not as a record of illness, but a new, liberated art form.
We had not been up there for more than 10 minutes when I fell from an altitude of circa 723 hours straight down at a sickening speed. And I fell till at last I was utterly and totally squashed and split open upon the gigantic and extraordinary luxurious Santa Maria Giant Cathedral Giant Grand Square.
Dubuffet called this work art brut, rough or direct art. Another painter in his collection, a gentle Swiss woman known as Aloise, who spent her middle and later years in an asylum.
I was one of those old maids who were afraid. Those women who dare not say either yes or no. They are kept under lock and key. They are not supposed to leave the convent.
If one buys the idea, and I certainly do, that there are unconscious elements, that one buys the whole concept of the unconscious, if you like, I think it's very important not to equate what is produced with what might be the problem of the person. I think it may be that somebody may paint, if you like, from their healthier side, or from a new possibility, if you like, in the unconscious.
Art brut comes not just from mental illness. It is the product of elation, or drugs, or trance, like the work of the medium Madge Gill.
Deep down in the heart of every human being there lies the soul, with its longing, yearning after the attainable. But at what a cost to the individual who strikes out after individuality.
This lovely tapestry is by an elderly Englishwoman found subsisting on a diet of sugared water, believing herself the descendant of a Persian princess. There is no evidence that she continued to weave after her recovery.
Well, this is the work of a manic depressive lady. She was always seeing angels and seeing Jesus and the Virgin Mary about the place. She was talking to them, she was singing hymns, she was doing everything in praise of God. And she was directing her energies through religious symbolism, and the angel was a symbol of liberation for her, of being free. And she's painted this lovely picture of a tree. This is at the fulcrum point of her paintings, where she's painting from her experience still. She's not concerned about the detail of the tree. It's not a particular tree, but she's expressed the feeling of the tree. She's not too concerned about getting the coloration right, but the movement and the texture and the flow are what's important to her. So this is a midway point. From this point on, she begins to lose her ability to paint from her experience and what she feels, and begins to paint from what she knows. And here we have here the Fates of Christ. Instead of expressing the feeling and the movement of the figure, she's begun to localize herself down on little details. She's put the eyelashes in now. And this process of lack of energy in the pictures continues to where she couldn't think of anything to paint and turned to using templates. And she's arranged these templates in this very sweet, ladylike way of flowers. But there's very little of her in these now. There's very little content. The colours are very conventional and correct. And really, she's in the controlled situation where we'd like people to start growing from, but she's come from that point and is working backwards. And the last picture she did was an attempt to draw some daffodils, which I think is quite a nice drawing. But she cried and she left and said, look, I can't do it. I'm not interested in art anymore because it's gone. I can't do it anymore.
Would you say that the sort of adjustment that is necessary for a patient to make to be accepted back into society is not always, from your point of view, a healthy adjustment?
Well, I've got two hats on. I'm an artist and I'm an art therapist. And the artist in me says, there's splendid pictures and I wish I could paint like that. And for the lady's sake, I wish she could paint like that as well. But as a therapist, one has to keep one's eye on whether the lady is well and how she's doing. It would be useful for us to continue to encourage her to paint and see if she could get to that sort of freedom and expression without having to resort to mental illness to do it. So I'm divided, really. On one hand, I think they're splendid pictures, but on the other hand, I'm glad she did these. Because if she'd still been doing those, she wouldn't have been able to leave the hospital.
paintings of Adolf Wölfli, together with lectures on psychiatric art, are at the ICA in London until the end of June. And Wölfli and Aloysi's work can be seen in the Scottish Arts Council's exhibition, Another World, at Dartington Hall, Devon, from June the 22nd.